Okay. All right. So welcome everybody. This is live Q&A call number 3, but we are focusing on chakra 2. So hopefully, I think it's a lot. I think the pace is a lot, and I think you guys are doing great keeping up with it, because I think it's a lot to absorb and to integrate and to apply all of this stuff. But from what I'm getting feedback from you guys so far on email, you're doing a great job with staying with it. So keep hanging in there. Hopefully it's manageable little pieces. And we'll just, you know, ogres aren't the only one with layers, right? So we're just going to go one layer at a time. So let's get started with a grounding and a centering and an intention. And I love our big class, but I'm also really happy that we have fewer people, because that's more interaction that we can have with each other individually without going too far over. All right, you guys ready? I just love seeing your faces. I just like looking at you guys. All right, so let's go ahead, feet on the floor, close your eyes. Deep breath, and let it out. Either check or set your grounding cord, making sure it goes all the way to the center of the planet, that it's anchored in the middle of the earth. And I'm going to just do a quick centering so we have more time to talk. So if you want to, you know, on your own, run your energy, energize your first 2 chakras, that's great. Go ahead and do that. If you want to do a golden sun, you can do that. But I'm going to go right into 3 deep breaths, inhaling new energy into your heart. And exhaling, relaxing your body, radiating that love in every direction. Inhaling new energy in. Exhaling, letting go of the past, radiating that love. And one more, inhaling new energy into your heart. And exhaling, letting go of the future, relaxing into this moment, right here, right now. And just breathe into that. And from this place of calmness and peace, take a moment to clarify your intention for our call today. Knowing that there's no right answer. It could be a feeling, it could be a color, it could be a word, it could be a very specific outcome. Whatever shows up is fine. And when you feel ready, go ahead and bring your awareness back to your body, back to the room, back to the call. Open up your eyes. It always feels so good to do that. All right. So, you guys want to share your intentions real quick? Or should we just jump into Q&A? Q&A. I'm getting some nods. Yeah? All right. Let's do it. So, Why don't we start with, you know what, I want to start actually with one of the questions I got, because it's a basic one, and I want to start more basic, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys. And then I love this class because when I ask for feedback and questions, you guys give them to me. So you guys are awesome. I wrote them all down, all the ones that I've gotten so far. But one person asked more specifically, where is chakra 2 located? So that's pretty basic. So I want to make sure everybody gets that. If you take 2 fingers and put them just right below your belly button, and then stick a little finger right there, like that, that's where your second chakra is on the front. So 2 fingers below your belly button, and then just stick your finger in right there. On the back side, because now we are moving up through the torso, so the next, these 5 chakras in the middle of the body have a front and a back. On the back, it's going to be the same place. So it's like right at the top of your sacrum, maybe just a little bit below the top of your sacrum. But you could kind of feel with your fingers, like, you know, like you could feel when you're off. Like I have my hand on my chest and front and my sacrum in the back. I can feel it, right? So just bring, my shoulder's still really stiff, so I can't really move this side as well. So just bring it till your fingers feel like they're even. Does that make sense, you guys? I can see you, you know that, right? Like, so if you look at me blankly, I'll just wait for you to respond.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, is it?
I got it.
Surface? Is it surface? Is it sub-Q? Is it the center of our bodies? Where is it coming from?
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. Can you say it again?
Yeah, is it surface or sub-Q, or does it come from the center of our bodies, or is it more on the outside?
Goes to the very center of your body. And so what do I have? This isn't very good, but it's the best that I have, I think. So if this was your front funnel and this is your back funnel, say that they're wider here at the outsides,
okay.
They're going to come together like that in the middle of your body.
Okay.
Energetically, they're in the center of your body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great question. And that's going to be true for all of the paired chakras. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions about location or kind of more physical stuff side of it?
Mm-mm.
Logistics of it? No? Okay. Do you guys have questions? Should I open the floor to you guys, or do you want me to go through the questions I got by email?
Go through the questions you got.
Okay.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You guys are so funny. Okay, so I kind of want to organize it so it makes sense. So I'm going to kind of go from the more simple questions and answers to probably the more complex and more involved as best I can. So somebody asked me about why I said chakra 2 is about water. And it's kind of like A plus B. No, it's not. It's like that logic thing where A is B and B is C, and so A is B is C, kind of, you know? Because chakra 2 governs our emotions. Our emotions in most symbologies are water, associated with the element of water. And that's really the extent of it is chakra 2, emotions. Emotions are water, so chakra 2 is water, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Just do some of these little things.
Yeah.
Or nods. Nods are good, so I know you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that. And that's why in the chakra fixes, being around water is going to help the second chakra. It just, it resonates at that. It calms it, it soothes it, it balances it, just being around water. And that could be a lake, a creek, the rain sometimes. It could even be taking a shower or a bath. So all of those are going to be healing for the second chakra. So the next question was kind of a question about chakra 2 relationships and where do we draw the line between chakra 1 is family and tribe, and chakra 2 is relationships, but there's some family stuff in there, and is there a really clear delineation? And in my experience, there isn't, and that's mainly because of the way that chakra 2 governs all of our relationships, right? So chakra 1 stuff, our tribe that we're born into, our family of origin, the family that we're born into is very chakra 1. But how we relate to them is often chakra 2, because that's how, I say this all the time, how we do anything is how we do everything, right? So how we do relationships with our siblings, with our parents, with our boss, with whoever, is how we do all of our relationships. So relationships exist in chakra 2 land, even if they're with somebody who is in our chakra 1 world, right? Our family that we're born into. Even if they're in our chakra 3 world, where they're our boss or the corporation or the government or whatever. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So because it's any kind of relationship, it's in there with chakra 2. You guys asked a lot of great questions about chakra 2. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm kind of looking for patterns here. Any follow-up questions around that, you guys? Any clarity that you need on that?
No, that's pretty clear.
No?
Good.
Okay. So when we look at chakra 2 and the imbalances and the relationships that chakra 2 is governing, there's a lot of challenges, right? Like relationships are some of our biggest challenges in our whole lives. We've got challenges with long-term relationships. We've got challenges with family relationships. We got challenges with relationships with people who are no longer in our lives, whether it's because of separation, that you're not talking to them anymore, or because they've passed on, or whatever. And we also have issues that may be in other chakras that can affect our relationships governed by our second chakra. So somebody was asking me about ADHD, which I really see as a sixth chakra issue because it's nervous system, and a lot of neurological patterns, but we're going to get to that, I think, in more depth later, because when we have these multi-chakra issues, it's going to be better to understand each of those chakras and how they contribute. And how I see things like ADHD and relationships, and we'll do a little bit of it today, but we can go further into it, is first chakra issues, because it's our family of origin that creates our patterns. It creates our nervous system patterns that we plug into. It's also our sixth chakra, because our sixth chakra governs our brain, and our brain is what is turning on and off that fight or flight, right? It's also our sixth chakra because the neurotransmitters that are involved are chemicals in our brain. So it's like the physical chemistry of the brain is a sixth chakra issue. But because we're talking about relationships and the challenge of the different challenges of relationships, we're kind of hitting on it early from a limited perspective, right? So just from a second chakra perspective, what I want to say about that is that our growing up experience really puts in place our spiritual lessons for the rest of our lives. So in a lot of ways, you could think of the time that you spend growing up with your family is kind of setting the stage for all the healing you're going to do later. This is kind of the best case scenario, right? It's like glass half full kind of a thing. And there's so much to this, you guys. I want to make sure that I explain it fully, but I don't want to go too far afield. So I think I want to say this. Our relationships with other people exist inside of us and our consciousness. So my relationship with Jenny exists inside of me, and Jenny's relationship with me exists inside of her. Not to put you on the spot, Jenny, but just as an example. So if Jenny's walking down the street and she's mad at me because she thinks that I was dismissive of her, I'm making this all up as I go, right? Well, that's inside of her. And I say I wasn't dismissive. Say I did everything I could to draw her out and she wouldn't talk to me. And so I finally said, okay, well, I got to go because I told you that I had 10 minutes and our 10 minutes are up. And then she felt like I was dismissive of her and didn't listen to her. You with me, guys?
Mm-hmm.
So now Jenny's walking down the street kind of fuming, going, God, Kara was so dismissive of me. She didn't give me time. She didn't give me attention, blah, 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 blah. Our relationship exists inside of Jenny at that time. Right?
Yeah.
Now, if I go off and I'm doing my thing and I'm totally happy, I'm like, oh, this is great. I had time to talk to Jenny. We talked whatever about what we needed to. She got to say whatever she wanted to say. Our relationship is living inside of me. And I'm having a very different experience of our relationship than Jenny is. So the healing, no matter what is going on, can always happen inside of us for that relationship. And that's the first place for the healing to happen. When you heal your part or your interpretation or where the relationship lives in you, sometimes the relationship changes, the other person treats you differently, or sometimes you then have conversations that you never would have had before and you say, hey, I want to talk about this relationship and how come we do this, right? How come I felt like you were dismissive of me when we were talking earlier? And then I can say, oh my gosh, I didn't feel that way. I thought you said everything you wanted to say. And so now we can have that conversation without being triggered into our past, because I've healed my stuff and Jenny's healed her stuff. And now I can say, I told you I had 10 minutes. That was the only time I had. I felt like you said whatever you needed to say, so I thought we were good. But I hear that you feel like you didn't get enough time with me, so is there something else you wanted to say to me? Because I have time now, right? That's going to heal that relationship inside of Jenny, right? And if Jenny, between the time that we had our 10-minute conversation and before we came back again, she went, wait a second, Kara's really not dismissive. She told me she had 10 minutes. Why am I so upset? Oh, there's something inside of me. This is my second chakra stuff that I can heal, because this is a pattern, because I always feel like people don't give me enough time. I always want more time and I feel like they've been dismissive of me. So now I'm starting to see the pattern. Kara was the catalyst to bring up for me how I have this pattern around relationships. And now I can heal that inside myself. And so if she did that healing and then came back to me and said, hey, I just wanted to let you know, I felt like you dismissed me last time we talked, and I realized that you didn't, that it was my old stuff that I've now healed. And so I just want to clear the air, because if you got any impression from me that I was mad at you, that would be why, but I'm not, and it wasn't your fault, and now we're good. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the questions I got were about how do we heal our relationships with people who have passed, people who we're not talking to, and people we're estranged from, or people that we're afraid we're going to be hurt by. Right? So you can see how in all of those scenarios, we can heal that relationship inside of us, because that relationship only exists inside of us. Is that making sense? You guys know the old Zen story about the what do they call him? The monk, I guess, the monk and the novice monk, and they're walking through the forest, and they've taken strict vows of celibacy, and they're supposed to never touch women, and blah, 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 blah. And they come across a river, and there's a woman at the river who can't get across and needs to get across for whatever reason, and she needs help. And so the elder monk picks her up and carries her across the river and puts her down. And then they go their separate ways. So the two monks go walking one way. They don't see her ever again. And a little while later, the novice monk says, "How could you do that? How could you touch a woman and carry her across the river like that?" And he's like really, really upset. And the elder monk says, "I put her down at the edge of the river, but you're still carrying her around." Right? Mm. And that's what we're doing. And when we have these relationship patterns that are stored in chakra 2, we're bringing those to every relationship that we have. So any relationship that we have can be a doorway to healing those relationship patterns that reside in chakra number 2. So I'm going to pause for just a second, because I want to give you guys just a minute to respond, to think about that, to ask any questions, because I need some feedback from you about where you are and what you're understanding before I want to go into the next piece. Okay? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Regina.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to share. So obviously, I grew up in an alcoholic, dysfunctional family.
Me too.
Yeah. Mom towards me, very physical and mentally abusive. Anyway, so forth and so on. So she passed a while ago, and my brother was always distant, and I kept trying and trying to get a relationship with him because my mother had passed. We got everything, squared away as far as money and the house. There was no issues. Everything was good to go. He was still distant, though, married with children, and never really saw them growing up. And so they're all grown up now, and I keep trying. I was still trying to get a relationship with him, and he said, "Well, you talk to my wife." I said, "Well, I don't want to talk to I like talking to your wife, but I want to talk to you. I want to have a relationship with you." I always tried to go, "Let's have lunch." Oh, he was always busy. There was always an excuse. So one day I just said, "I'm done. I let this go. I can't do anymore. I've tried." And I felt like just a release from that relationship, just letting it go, and not trying anymore. I see him at Thanksgiving and Christmas. He does text me. He works like 2 minutes away from me at the house here, and then he lives like 20 minutes away, but I never see him during the year. except for the 2 holidays. But that's okay, because I accept that and I move forward. And it just felt good to just not put myself in that situation, constantly trying to get a relationship going, because it's not going to happen. I accept the way he is. And it feels, I don't know, it feels good. It feels rewarding in some dimension. But he texts me like once in a while saying, "Oh, just checking in, see how you're doing." And I'm there like, "Yeah, I'm doing great, but why bother?" Because it's like, I don't, I'm here. And so I just wanted to share that with everybody about the relationship, second chakra.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes that's the way it goes.
Oh yeah.
People aren't going to meet us where
Right.
we are, or even where we want them to meet us.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
And it's time to fish or cut bait sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But again, what you're illustrating so beautifully is really recognizing the truth of what's so, what he's capable of versus what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of you wanting something that you can't have from him is
Right.
existing inside of you and beating you up, not affecting him. Right?
No, not at all.
And so it's beautiful self-care to say, this relationship isn't working for me.
Right. Right.
And
Yep.
it's done. And it can change, right? Like it may change. You may
I hope so.
find that something happens or whatever, and you can still hold space for something to change and be different, while at the same time being an acceptance of
Right.
where he's at.
Yes. Because we're older now. I mean, I'm 63. He's 4 years younger than me, so whatever that is. But I figured, we're getting older, and time is ticking, and we're not like our parents. So what's the problem? But I can't get myself in that predicament.
It's a two-way street. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Jenny. Yeah, Jenny, go ahead.
Something that I learned a while back that has really, really helped me, because first and second chakra are my hugest issues, is that, and this is just a personal belief, so whatever resonates with you, but I have chosen to believe that before I came here to Earth, I sort of made a contract with everybody that, okay, you're going to be my dad, you're going to be my mom, you're going to be my husband who divorces me, you're going to, all this kind of stuff. Because before, up until then, I always felt like a victim. And when I got that information, it resonated so much with me, because it was like, oh, that takes the victimhood away. Because I realized I made a conscious decision back when I couldn't remember that I made that decision, that I chose these challenging relationships because to further who I am as a person. And it goes back to what you were saying, Kara, about it really isn't about anybody else. It's about me. It's about what's going on in me. And that took me a really long time for it to really sit, because the victimhood was so comfortable of, well, it's all your fault. It's not my fault. I don't have anything to do with it. And that flipped it on its head. And I had to realize, no, the work is all mine. If I choose to do it. I mean, I can choose to go back to the victimhood, but I just decided I can't stand living like that. So, it takes a lot of courage to do the work, and it takes a lot of courage to say, it really isn't about you. It's about the work I have to do with me. But when I can remember that I chose all of this, then it just sort of like gets rid of all that garbage.
That's true. Yeah.
There's a book. Have you guys seen this book? Destiny of Souls, Michael Newton, which talks about exactly that, Jenny. Michael Newton's a hypnotherapist, and he started taking his clients. So his clients would come to him with a problem, and he would take them into hypnosis and say, okay, go back to the time when this issue started. And then his clients started going back into the time between lives and setting up the exact relationships that Jenny's describing and all those things. It's literally one of my favorite books of all time, and I so highly recommend it. Destiny of Souls. Yeah, and he's got a second one called Journey of Souls, which I don't like as much because I totally disagree with some of it. Not my experience. This totally matches my experience of talking to animals, talking to people who've passed, you know, all of that. Like this, everything in here matches. And when I first read this book, I was like, whoa, somebody got it. Like it just really resonated with me. And then the second one, I was like, yeah, I don't think so. I don't know what happened, but I'm not buying it. I still have it, but I don't love it as much. So anybody else comments about that? Regina, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Kathy.
Yeah, thanks, Regina and Jenny both, because I'm kind of going through that process right now. My mother passed away 2.5 years ago, and I have a 21-year-old niece, 22 now, that apparently on my mother's deathbed, Mom told the granddaughter that you don't have to please anybody but yourself anymore. You don't have to be kind to anybody you don't want to be kind to just for the sake of pleasing them. Well, somewhere in everything that transpired, of all the good that I thought I was doing to be helpful and kind to everybody, she took that all as like she's angry at me for everything. And I'm just kind of chalking it up to, she's mad at me because my mother died, you know, because she's got no other, she grew up in a house of perfection. Mom and dad were valedictorian, salutatorian. Her older brother is headed for a doctorate in environmental science, and she's quote unquote just a nurse, you know. So there's a lot of
So, Kathy, you're kind of breaking up.
I'm sorry.
Your internet's not that stable, so you broke up a little bit there. Do you want to summarize for us real quick?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can own up to, you know, if there was something that I intentionally did that I can't think of with this niece, but the hardest part is that I retired, moved back to Sheboygan. I'm not allowed to live in the family home. She is, and I'm living 2 doors down. And I'm still just really kind of struggling with some of that. And I know I need to let it go for my own sake. But you know, every encounter with her, she's just like wants to stick that dagger in even deeper every chance she gets. And that's where I kind of have a struggle with some of that. But so, thank you to the others that shared that though.
Yeah, thanks to Jenny and Regina. Thanks to you too. As you can probably tell from this class, I'm not a big fan of Just Let It Go. Love the song. Love the song. I was at a Marine base in South Carolina, and there were guys watching that movie and singing along with it. Crazy. Anyways, so letting stuff go is awesome if it's not triggering anything inside of you. And then you've already let it go. If it's triggering something inside of you, you're not ready to let it go because it's here to teach you something. There's something inside of you coming up to be healed. And you guys have the advantage of the goal line and the soul line, and understanding that you're always going to be bumping up against, sorry, this is why we're here in physical bodies, this is what we do. And in some way, we're going to be bumping up against all of this inside stuff. So again, your relationship with your sister exists inside of you. You can heal the part that's inside of you. You can potentially live in peace 2 doors down, see her in the house that should be yours day in, day out, and be like, it's all good. But you can't fake that. And you should not be trying to let it go, because what's getting triggered inside of you is the stuff that you came here in this lifetime to heal. You've earned the right to heal that. And she is your teacher to make sure that that comes up for you to heal. So when you look at our soul contracts and our soul relationships, that's people are doing stuff for us to make sure that we get it. And our family are our biggest triggers. They're like our core curriculum. They are making sure that that chakra 1, life or death, I'm going to die if I'm not part of the tribe. I can't speak up because I'm going to get excommunicated. I know that's a Catholic Church thing, but you know what I mean. I'm going to get thrown out of the tribe. I'm going to get the silent treatment. I'm going to, whatever the word is. So our families, our closest relationships, so that's the family we're born into, and it also includes anybody that we marry or live with. They're here to help us heal stuff. Our job is to live within the context that understands that. 99% of the population, probably more, doesn't live in that context. Which is why I made so many videos for you in the getting started section. Because it's a big paradigm shift. But the whole reason that I created this class was to give you the tools so that you can find that peace, so you can heal whatever keeps getting poked and triggered inside of you about that house and about whatever issues there are about power and family and what we owe each other and your place in the world, your effectiveness in the world. Next week will be third chakra issues, which are going to come up around that as well. Don't worry about that now. But just to give you kind of a bigger picture of it, this is why I created this class, because I want you to heal that shit so you can be you. Be the best version of you that you came here to be. And you came here to heal that. And so we're just taking it one chakra at a time, and we're just going to do one layer of each chakra, because we don't have that much time in a week to heal everything. But we're going to give you the experience and the tools so you can go back as much as you need to. And it becomes the lifestyle, right? Like, oh wow, I'm really pissed. I mean, I got so triggered. When was it? Like a couple months ago. The first time in my life, I was yelling on the phone and swearing at a human being. The first time in my whole life, and I hung up on that person. I was like, wow, this is great, because I hardly ever get this triggered in my whole life. So there's some really good healing that's going to happen here. Because I don't know who that person is, but obviously it's me, and I have that in me to be like that. But I didn't know I could do that and yell and swear and slam down phones and stuff. And so what did I do after that? I went, okay, that's mine. That, the thing is the first step is always, let's take what's ours. The way that other person treated me was not okay. That will not ever happen again with that person. But that's secondary. The really good news was, man, I got like a doorway to some really deep shit that I can now heal, that I would not have gotten in any other way, because I've been living happily in my life without getting that upset about anything. So our upsets are good news, but we have to take ownership of them. And then we go clean up whatever it is, and we clear what's inside of us. And then, I did that. I hired a counselor. I was, somebody I trusted. I was like, this shit's coming up. It's coming up to be healed. Help me get to the bottom of it. And she did. There were tears. There was like, there was everything. And then the next time I had to talk to that person, I was like, I'm all good. It's all good. I'm not triggered. I'm not in the same place. And so the next relationship that I have with, this is not a significant other relationship, but, the next interaction I have on, with somebody, that trigger is not going to be there anymore because I said, oh, I see the red flag. And this is not just you, Kathy, this is everybody. Like, this is the lifestyle. This is how it works. This is living in a spiritual context. It's like, okay, I'm here to share my gifts and I'm here to heal my stuff and learn my lessons. And so I got to heal a really deep childhood wound because that person was in a position to trigger it inside of me. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm a little bit on the soapbox, but I want you guys to really know, like, I live this stuff too. I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do, and be gentle with yourself, right? So, Kathy, as you look at that and look at it from your second chakra perspective of, wait, what's the pattern here? What's the belief system, right? Like the homework questions. What are the judgments that I'm holding about relationships? And maybe pull back and say, okay, this relationship is the one that bugs me the most in my life. And it's the role model for all my relationships, because if I'm this way with this person, I'm this way with all these other persons to some degree, right? So where did that come from? What do I feel? How am I going to release that? And then, work your process from there. And I see you, Vicki, and I will give you a chance to talk in just a sec. But I do want to say, like last week, I told you guys I would make that working your process lesson and thing. And because I got sick and I'm a solopreneur, I haven't done it yet, but it's on my list. I still promise to do it for you. It will get done soon. So, Kathy, not to put you on the spot, but since your question brought it up, how is that landing with you, and what are you thinking about that?
It's kind of hard to swallow that somebody 40 years younger than me is here to teach me a lesson, but I see the pattern of, because she is so much like my mother, and yes, and I know that there's mother issues to, and this is what where I'm kind of looking at. I'm blessed with an opportunity to rewrite my life script now that I know for sure I'm ADHD, because now I can look back and say, oh, this got screwed up because my brain was like rapid firing. But yes, but there is still that core thing, that whole judgment thing of, well, you're not good enough, you're not trying hard enough, you're lazy, all that stuff that comes with the inattentive ADHD that was completely unknown to anybody back when I was growing up. So it's like a double-edged sword, a blessing and a curse at the same time.
And you can break it down into chunks.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of forgiveness. So when you release the emotional upset around the situation, when you just give voice to that and you pound the pillow or you cry or do whatever you need to do to release the emotion, then you can do the forgiveness and forgive the judgments that you made against yourself. For me, it was, feeling like I betrayed myself for buying into somebody else's bullshit that there was something wrong with me. Right? So I forgave myself for judging myself as betraying myself by thinking I was wrong or bad or somehow inadequate or less than or broken. Right?
Yeah.
And then you do your true statement. So it's always about going back to that emotional charge, releasing that charge. You can do it with tapping, you can do it with crying, you can do it with freeform writing. Recognizing those judgments, forgiving yourself, forgiving them. I forgive you for not knowing what nobody knew, because how could you know? But I was still mad at you because you didn't know, right? Because you should have known, because you were my mom and you should have loved me and figured it out, right?
I was raised Catholic on top of all that, so that was real fun.
Yeah.
I walked away from all that too.
Yeah. So all of that comes into it.
Yeah.
And so you go through that whole process until you're at the place where you recognize, like, wow, I'm whole and complete, and I have this beautiful gift that nobody understands. And I thought it was a hindrance or a handicap, but it turns out that it feeds this other part of me that allows me to do this other beautiful thing. You know, whatever that truth is for you, so that you've really cleaned out that whole constellation of emotions and judgments and that whole pattern. So you find the truth of who you are. Making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Vicki, I know you've been, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kathy.
No, I'm just saying thank you. I'm going to mute now.
Thank you for sharing. Awesome. Vicki, you've been waiting patiently.
Well, yes. And after everything you said, everything changes about what you want to add. I severed the relationship with my mother many years ago because I realized it was toxic. I saw the pattern, but I bonded with my dad, and I wanted that relationship, but I wasn't allowed to have it because he said it was too stressful on his marriage. And rather than being upset at that time, 20 or 25 years ago, I decided it was a defining moment, that it was time for me to move forward. And then 3 or 4 years ago, on his 75th birthday, he called me. So we are now in relationship. Unbeknownst to everybody else in the family, and at first I thought, I too was born and raised Catholic, and my mother should have been a travel agent because I've not seen anybody as good at guilt trips as she is. But I decided that wasn't mine to define. If I want a relationship with my dad and he's willing to call me and text me and be a Facebook friend, then that is what I'm going to do.
Good for you.
So yeah, I think a lot of times we have to remember the choice is to leave that relationship.
Yeah.
And I always thought, life never pertained to me. I was never that important growing up. And so I treated people the way I treated people because I didn't want anybody to feel the way I did, until I moved to Austria and I found this whole different culture of social medicine, and people, gentleness is really coveted there. And so I shined. I mean, they loved me. Like, I was so caring and kind. And so I hope that everybody gets a time to find that, because now when I don't find it, it's just like, oh, okay, well, this is just not a healthy place for me. And it's okay that I, am so bonded with the animals. Even my husband, when they say, well, if you ask Vicki, will she choose horses or you? He'll say the horses. So, I just want, and I held the intention that I wanted this relationship with my dad for many, many years. And my brothers thought I wanted to do that to hurt my mom or make them divorce, or, there were all these things around it. And I knew my intention was just because I bonded with my dad. If I can see my dad, I can look in his eyes and I can tell you how he's doing. And so I knew that my intentions were pure. And when he called, I about fell over, because it's just, I wish we could have more. So I think that's my intention, is maybe to have a little bit more connection. But that's also on my part, that I need to share more text-wise, because he has to call me. But yeah, it's all possible. I think when we let go, and for me, this class is more about expanding. It will be healing as we go through some of this stuff, but a lot of it for me is just expanding.
Awesome. Makes sense.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Thank you. All right. So, I still have 2/3 of a page of questions, but I want to open it up because we've been talking about a lot, and we've actually been talking about a lot of the questions that are still written down here. And I'm hoping that things are starting to shift for you guys. If you are some of the people who asked some of the questions, if you're starting to plug in, oh, this is how my relationship question or my situation fits into what we're talking about.
So can I ask something? It's
Yes.
Jean.
Go ahead, Jean.
So as I listen to people, one of the things I'm wondering, so I have an older brother who I've been very estranged from for, I don't know how many years, 25 years, between 25 and 30. And he's recently, due to some other family issues, he's reached out and wanting to know if I'm willing to reconcile. But I really believe he's got some significant mental health issues. And he's been very resentful and hostile over the years. And our mother was also paranoid schizophrenic. So, and she was very damaging in a very short period of time that she lived with us. And unfortunately, she was out of the house most of our childhoods. But so I've been kind of working on what I need to do with my relationship or lack thereof with this brother. And on the one hand, I think, okay, am I supposed to be learning a lesson here about how to deal with mental health issues with various family members? Obviously, our mother has long ago died, but or is this an opportunity to learn to say, you know what, this isn't a healthy relationship. I can't do it because of these concerns. And so as I think of this on a chakra level, which I would have really never thought about before, I've thought about it in a lot of other terms, but I'm curious if you have any feedback about kind of how to sort that out or understand it better.
Great, great question. And so what comes up for me, Jean, in this situation is, number one, to be mindful of starting or restarting a relationship with somebody when you still have unresolved issues inside of you that you know of, right? So when you get in relationship, say you get into relationship with him again, there may be other stuff that comes up. But if right now you're deciding, like, do I want to be in relationship or not? My recommendation would be to do some work on yourself first to see, you know, just a simple tapping, saying out loud how you feel about your relationship with him, what your fears are, what your concerns are, what has happened in the past, what you don't want to have happen in the past, and what you do want to have happen. So what's your ideal scene for that? What would that look like? So that would be step one, to help you make a decision or make a choice about whether to be in relationship with him again or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I appreciate that. I think one of the difficulties for me is I've done a lot of meditating around it and get really clear messages that it's not a safe relationship, but intellectually I'm trying to override that a little bit, actually a lot, because I feel real guilty about that. So
yeah, so that would be something to tap on. Bye, Regina. And Vicki left us as well. Bye, Vicki. So so that would be where I would start with what's getting triggered, even just talking about it. What can you heal right now before you make your decision, so that you make that decision from a clear place. And then the other part two, is having relationships with people with mental illness really brings up a lot of chakra 3 issues. So just be mindful of that, you know, as we move through the chakras, chakra 3 is going to come into play, because boundaries are super important, and boundaries often with people with mental illness get stomped on, and then you get accused of something that's not accurate because they're not getting what they want. So to me, from a chakra perspective, which was one of your questions, yes, this is like a chakra 1, 2, and 3 issue, because it's your family, it's your sibling, it's your relationship and your relationship patterns, right, that influence all of your relationships, but also the special case of being in relationship with somebody with a mental illness, it's very much in the third chakra in terms of boundaries and choices and honoring yourself.
Yeah, and I was smiling as you said that because I was thinking that stuff was setting boundaries and then they don't get what they want and so they stomp all over you. And that's part of what I really don't want to step back into.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Sorry, go ahead, Jean.
I just said that's exactly.
Stop it.
Sorry, I heard Lisa talking to her dog, not you. Say it again.
She's been a butt pain all morning. Stop it. Sorry. My apologies.
No worries.
No big. I wasn't saying anything big. Just that is an exhausting process. So.
Yeah, and so and that's gonna, you know, test your chakra 3 strength. So it's really you want to have a nice, clear, strong third chakra before, if you choose to go into it. It's going to make it easier to say yes or no, and it's going to make it easier to honor your boundaries and say, this is what I can do, and no, this is where I draw the line, and be clear in yourself, because the more clear you are in yourself, the less influenced you'll be by the shit they throw back at you when things don't go the way they want and when they realize they can't walk all over you anymore.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'll wait and see what we cover in the third chakra.
Tomorrow. You'll get it tomorrow. So you're getting there. All right. What else? Anybody else? Thoughts, questions, comments at this point?
I just have one thing to add. If you have the availability of a therapist or anybody else that can help you with this, like Kara shared earlier, I cannot stress it enough. I don't think I would be here if it hadn't been for my therapy, because I couldn't do it by myself. This stuff is so charged, and so I'm just so charged.
Yeah.
And trying to do it by yourself and trying to do it with just meditation or just tapping or whatever, those things work really well. But if you really want to go on the fast track, I actually got a therapist who did tapping, which just exploded it out of the water. It was amazing. So I highly recommend it.
And I second that. These are the kinds of things, and you know, for Kathy, the issues that you brought up as well. These are the really, really challenging relationships that we really need to pull in our experts and honor that we're just not designed and trained to be able to manage it alone. And even if we manage it for other people, we still need to draw in the experts for ourselves, because that's why we have experts. Because the mental mind fucks that can happen with mental illness are very real and super, super challenging. And having a professional on your team to help you orient and manage and understand the terrain is really critical. Thank you, Jenny, for bringing that up. Pretty upbeat, right? Chakra 2, creativity and sex. It'll be great. Doink. All right, back to the questions if nobody else has anything else coming up. Okay. So I can't remember who asked me this, but somebody asked about it being hard to recognize and define your own emotions. Is this a chakra 2 issue? Yes, it is. And also this is often the conditioning that we go through in our families, where it's not safe to have emotions. It's not safe to express emotions. It's not safe to express any kind of vulnerability, and we have to build that armor in order to survive in our family or our schools, or, you know, whatever community organizations we're part of, or churches or whatever. So I will share that I spent, I don't know, man, 10 years trying to figure out how I felt in the moment. And that was like mid-20s to mid-30s for me. So my husband, Chris, was a wonderful catalyst for a lot of the growth, because he somehow has stuck with me through all kinds of shit. And I remember in my 20s recognizing that I didn't know how I felt. So big chakra 2 issue. And it would take me a good 24 to 48 hours when I would all of a sudden get that blink of like, oh, I was mad. That's what that feels like. And it still took me several more years to be able to go here, you know, it just, my window started getting closer and closer the more I did this work on myself, the more healing I did on the belief system around emotions and safety and fear of rejection and ridicule and harassment and, you know, whatever else, persecution. All of that stuff, I just started clearing away layer after layer around why my emotions weren't okay and doing a ton of forgiveness around that. So total multi-year chakra 2 project to just get back in touch with how do I feel right now? You know that Seinfeld where George flies back to Cincinnati to do the comeback joke? You guys watch Seinfeld?
Mm.
Oh man, everything in my world is a Seinfeld reference. So he gets zinged by somebody. He's eating a lot of shrimp and somebody says, hey, the ocean called. They want their shrimp back. And he's
Yeah.
at a meeting in Cincinnati and he lives in New York. And so he's like, oh, I don't know. He doesn't know what to say. And, you know, and so he ends up going home after the meeting and then flying back again a week later to have his comeback. And that was me and my emotions. You know, I'd have the interaction, but it would take days to know like what I wanted to have said in that moment and to know how I felt. So I just started bringing that window closer and closer the more that I did freeform writing. So I did Julia Cameron's Artist's Way.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So morning pages and just, you know, allowing that to come through, just starting to allow my feelings, my thoughts to come through, like opening the floodgates. This was a great book for that. Doing a lot of tapping, doing a lot of self-forgiveness, healing a lot of issues and traumas from relationships, and, you know, trying to sort that out. So definitely recognizing and defining your emotions is chakra 2. And in my experience, it's not that easy if we've been so armored to have so many layers of protection. So if that's you guys, you know, stick with it, because I'm pretty good right now and I can know how I feel and I can even express it in the moment. So that was a whole other layer of it, was I know how I feel, but I'm afraid to say it for a long time. And that was for me a few years. So now I'm finally at the point where I know how I feel. I feel comfortable saying I feel this way. And I'm so much less judging of emotions falling into the category of good or bad, right? So these are some of the issues to start looking at and healing if this is your experience as well, because so many of us are conditioned to think that it's not okay to argue, it's not okay to disagree, it's not okay to feel a certain way, and it's definitely not okay to tell anybody if you feel a certain way, right? So there's layers to all of that. Go ahead, Lisa.
I just wanted to say that I'm with Jenny 1,000%. I found that when going through the classes, the modules, I had every single one of the traumas that you mentioned, bar none, every one of them. And I had over the years done the whole drugs and over excessive sexual thing and alcohol, you know this. And I've done the psychiatrists and the counsellors and the whole box and dice, and nothing shifted anything. But what I wanted to share here was, since beginning this journey, and this started some years ago, but more recently with the animal communication class and now the chakra class, I not only believe what Jenny was saying, but I actually have some sense of knowledge that it is in fact the way it is. So in other words, I have a knowing that we're here in this school and we choose, and the freedom and acceptance that comes with acknowledging that every single person in my life anyway is, and I've said this before, is either a teacher or a student. Each has their own journey, each has their own lessons, and when they come into contact with you in whatever way, emotionally, physically, spiritually, if you can look at them and go, what am I to learn from them, good or bad? What are they to learn from me, good or bad? And in a sense, it's not that you're coming from an isolated position, but if you can just be emotionally intelligent and put that aside, just put it over there for a minute and just look at this and say, right, I signed up for this shit. What is in this for me? If you can look at that, maybe the emotion comes later, but if you can look at that and go, right, that person's triggered such and such, this is in me. And Carl Jung said this, it is impossible to see in another that which does not exist in yourself. So if you can see that in another person and not go, oh, aren't they a bitch? You need to say, right, what is it in me that I'm recognizing this in them? And that is incredibly healing, whether it's your family, your friends, your tribe, your community, your blah, 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 blah. And it just changes everything. And I hope that I'm, I don't know, Jenny, do you see this way? Is this what's helped you through things?
I can't even tell you how much.
Yeah, right.
It just turned everything around for me.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what it's all about. And the chakra centers are kind of like our breadcrumbs. I love the yellow brick road analogy. It's our road from go to woe, from the root chakra to the crown. And as we, this is the tough stuff. This is the densest frequencies, everything down here, 1, 2, 3, we're all screwed. I don't know anyone that can just skate through the first 3 chakras, because that's not why we're here at all. And we need that help. And I think understanding that's what chakra 2 is telling us. Non-judgment, accept everything and don't judge everything. It's okay to do that, because that's what you're here to learn to not do. You have to do it to learn not to do it. And that healing is so powerful. But I'm thrilled Jenny mentioned that, because I thought, do I bring up this at this point in time, because we're only early on, but it's such a powerful, powerful healer, and it comes down to acceptance of others and acceptance of self. That's it.
I'll tell you, Lisa, the thing that I had to get to before that was I had to get to, I'm tired of living like this.
Right.
I had to get to a point of saying, I just don't want to live in this anger or whatever it is, this victimhood. Now what? Now what do I do? But I think you have to get to a point of saying something has to change before you can change.
Yeah. I found myself sitting on the shower floor with the taps turned on, and just grief, the amazing, tremendous, huge grief. I thought I was going to die. This that came out of me, and water. And I did not know at that time that water was related to the second chakra, but I just had to sit under that shower for I don't know how long. And it just, as I released, it soothed. As I released, it soothed. And I did this over and over and over again. And I think, as you say, you reach that point where you go, don't want to do this anymore. There's got to be something, is this as good as it gets? Is this as good as it gets? It can't be. And then it just kind of bursts. It's like a boil. You burst that boil. You'd be brave enough to put the pin in and burst it. And then all of this stuff comes up, and it takes a reasonable amount of time. It just keeps, it's not like, oh, today I'm not well, tomorrow I'm great. This is a life journey of healing, a life journey. But I agree. I believe that we come here to learn. And the more stuff we want to learn, the more stuff we bring in with us. Let's just bring in the whole box and dice. Let's bring in every trauma and get this shit sorted. You know, but there's a reason that we've chosen these things.
And you
Because
can't
we
heal
must
it
have
unless
known.
you experience it. Right?
Right.
You can't choose the good side if you haven't experienced the bad side.
That's it.
Right? So we set things up in order to make them obvious that that's what's healing. And
Yeah.
a lot of times we don't know what we're healing until after the fact too. So don't worry about that either. You don't have to know what the lesson is before it. You'll get it later. You'll see, oh, that's how that was. That's what I learned there. And not everybody has to get to a point of like overwhelm and throwing your hands up in the air and going, what the fuck am I doing? We can do it gently. We can do it gradually. That's totally okay too. I think to some degree, we all get to that place that Jenny mentioned and that you mentioned, Lisa, of like, okay, enough's enough. But it doesn't have to be a crisis necessarily. It can just be like, okay, I'm done with doing it this way. I need to learn another way to do it. And that's what we're up to here. So, so how do we do that? And, you know, I love the image of being in the shower on the floor crying and letting it out and letting that water soothe it, because that's the first step, is just allowing those emotions. But if you don't go back and find the judgments and forgive yourself for the judgments that you made against yourself and others, that pattern's not healed. Yeah. That's the glue that holds the pattern in place. You can get the emotions out, and that's fantastic and it's important, but it's only the first step. You still need to then do the forgiveness on the judgments. And then the creme de la creme is really owning that new truth, recognizing it. You're recognizing the truth that's existed all along, but you didn't see it because you had these weird blinders on that made you see things funny. Right? Like it's all a big misunderstanding. Our brains aren't fully developed until we're 25. By then we're on our own. But we've set up all of these lessons in those first early years where our brains don't even know everything yet. They don't even function fully. So we don't have any capacity for healing most of the stuff that we take on. So of course we're going to come back and heal it now. And recognize, and the fun thing is that we recognize the truth that we've recognized all along, that somehow we got separated from, because it's really like coming home. The truth is I'm perfect. The truth is I am a gift. The truth is I have so much to give. The truth is I'm generous, you know, and my generous nature or my lightheartedness, by some people, they thought that was bad or wrong, and they judged me, and I bought into it, but it's not. It's a great quality. So we recognize that truth that we've always known, but we've now cleared away the clouds so that we see it fully again, and we see it from our adult perspective, which is pretty freaking cool. All right, because my intention is, hi Louisa, welcome. Glad you're here. My intention is to be complete at 3:30. I want to make sure to cover the rest of these questions. So the answer to all of them is kind of the same. So one of the things is breaking things apart. So as you're healing chakra 2 stuff, break it down into small, manageable pieces. So don't do the whole constellation of every issue that's involved in this relationship. So it may be that you had a relationship with your parents where they thought you were fat, and they thought you were lazy, and they thought you were dumb, and they thought you were clumsy, right? Just pick one of those at a time. Go with one piece at a time. Break it down. Heal that piece. Don't try to heal everything all at once, even though it's, you know, like these webs that they're all connected around your relationship with your parents. But be gentle with yourself, heal each piece fully, and then, go to the next piece. Trust your consciousness. It knows what it's ready to heal. You don't have to force anything. It will present to you what is ready to be healed. So that's kind of my response to the question about ADHD and relationships, and healing that excitement of a new relationship versus impulse control. How do you do that? Well, the ADHD is in place because of the conditioning that happened as a child, most likely. So tease those pieces apart and start looking at them as separate issues, not just this big glomming thing. A great way to do that is to start with, I forgive myself for buying into the misunderstanding that these two things are completely intertwined and connected. The truth is they're separate issues, and I can heal them separately. We really conflate a lot of things in our minds because so I dated this guy in college who was Black. And when we broke up, he thought it was because he was Black. I was like, no, it's because you're a jerk. It's like he was making everything about race, and it wasn't about that. It's like I just didn't like the way he was treating me. He didn't respect my words. He didn't respect when I said I'm not available. He'd keep calling and calling and calling. It's like, no, it's not because you're Black. You're gorgeous. It's not that at all. It's that you're a jerk and you need to learn how to be in a relationship with somebody. So I could have conflated like Black men are don't respect my words, right? Well, that's not true, because any kind of person cannot respect my words. So I'm pulling those two things apart. It's, maybe it's Black men in their 20s. I don't know. Black men that are interested in me. I don't know. Whatever. But we're going to pull all those things apart. Okay. So the next thing that I want to cover is the thing that's kind of true for so many of us, especially in this realm, is we're sensitive. Most of us have been or still are shy and introverts, and most of us have been stomped on by somebody for being quiet or shy or sensitive, right? So second chakra issues. So how do we put ourselves out there when we've been stomped on for being ourselves in relationships, and then the relationships don't work? And this kind of goes back to the ADHD thing. A lot of what goes on in chakra 2 goes back to what we felt comfortable with in our families of origin as children. So what was the normal state of relationships for us back then? Was it that I can't confide in anybody in my family? Was it that I'll get made fun of if I say something personal about myself? That was my family. I got teased mercilessly. And understanding that what felt normal and safe to us as children is not necessarily how we want to feel today as adults. So there's a big difference between kind of status quo, what's normal in our family, especially like I'll use my example of my father. Still is an alcoholic, but was very much an alcoholic during my childhood. So very unstable, kind of unpredictable. He was a mean drunk, and it felt normal to me to not feel safe in my home. I felt safer outside my home. So that's a little bit of an issue when I then want to marry somebody and start a family, right? Like my normal is I'm happier when I'm alone outside, not when I'm in the home with the family. So healing that issue is going to help me in my personal relationship. The other thing, and this goes to the ADHD and the pattern of being a sensitive person with an open, generous heart who has gotten shot down or shut down for sharing that sensitivity and vulnerability. In both of those situations, there's fear, right? So there's fears that we have about what's going to happen. Our fears are emotions. Our emotions come from our belief system. So I have I'm going to just write myself a note. Emotions and thoughts and actions. I'm just writing myself a note because I'll post a little graphic. So they are all completely interrelated. Our actions come out of our behavior, but our behavior usually comes from our beliefs and our thoughts. So if we're feeling fearful, it means that we have a belief about something. Our fear is not generally in social situations a reliable indicator of what's actually going on. Our fears in relationships are typically our subconscious belief system, worried that we're going to get hurt again, worried that something's going to happen. And so the steps to take to kind of like stay true to ourselves and be the person that we want to be in relationship. So being expressive, being open, being affectionate, being all of those sensitive ways that we want to be in relationship, is to heal the underlying belief that's causing the fear that we're going to get hurt in this situation. So relationships exist inside of us. Even though, you know, I have a relationship with my husband, he's outside of me, but our relationship exists inside of me. So coming from that place of recognizing that if we want to live with open hearts, then we have to heal what's inside of us that's holding us back from expressing ourselves. And if we're in a relationship where we can't express ourselves, then we need to have that conversation with that person. So in here, I'm talking about, you know, primary relationship with a partner, spouse kind of person. So always the healing is first on ourselves, on what's getting triggered, being responsible and accountable and respondable to our emotions. Our emotions are ours. So if we're feeling fear, that's been created inside of us. In science, they talk about the proximate and the ultimate cause of things. So the proximate cause is the thing that happens right now, but the ultimate cause is the situation that was already there. So in terms of the spiritual psychology that we're talking about, the ultimate cause is that we created a belief system inside ourselves as we were growing up. We didn't know we were doing that. We did it completely without our awareness, without conscious choice. But that's the ultimate factor. The proximate factor is our daily interactions that bring up what that was. So it's what we've been talking about today is our relationships are not so much about what's happening right now. They're really about the ultimate cause. What's underneath that? What is that triggering inside of me that's coming up to be healed? I feel like I kind of jumped around there. So just like a thumbs up or a nod if that actually followed a logical progression and made sense to you guys. Okay, good. Always need that double check. So that was one of our questions, was how to stay open. And that's how to do it. The other thing that I want to say is, how are we doing? Of course, it's 3:30. The other question that I have is how do we erase old family patterns? And I believe we talked about this, especially with what Kathy brought up with her family of origin and those kinds of things. So the old family patterns, we heal them in ourselves. We heal the emotion as it's coming up. So when we go into upset about something, we don't go, oh yeah, because you're a motherfucker and you're all wrong and you know it's all you. We go, oh, it's an emotion. It's inside of me. It's mine. I can heal it. What's the belief that is triggering that emotion inside of me? And then you go and you heal that belief. And you heal that belief by going back to all of the tools that we're talking about, right? Tapping on whatever emotion is coming up right now, going back to the original time that you felt that way and healing that, letting that person, that little child, cry and swear and rant and rave and get the emotions out and say all the things that she didn't get to say in that situation. And then you recognize what are the beliefs, and you forgive yourself for buying into those beliefs or judging yourself in that way, and then you state your truth. So you can do that for the whole family. You can do that for any relationship, whether the person is living or dead, because that relationship still is alive inside of you, even if they're dead. So you can heal anything around that relationship that gets triggered, that causes upset inside of you. And we can talk more about that. I think I talked last week about doing a gestalt with that person, where you put two chairs facing each other and you sit in this chair, you're you, and you get up and you go into this chair, and you can have that conversation with that person and say, hey, why didn't you protect me when I was 3 years old and the grizzly bear was chasing us? And then that person, you go and sit there, and it's really kind of freaky what comes through when you do it. So make sure you have a grounding cord, okay? Always grounding cords first. First thing is always a grounding cord. But you can do the healing on yourself, work your process, and you can have those conversations with somebody, even if they're dead, in that gestalt setting where you're going to switch chairs from one to the other and be the voice for yourself and be the voice for the other person. And then you get to respond and say, well, I'm sorry that the bear was eating your heel, but I wanted my mom to protect me or my dad to protect me. And I felt like I was going to die because you weren't there taking care of me. And then they can say, oh, I totally understand that, because, grizzly bears are scary, and not having your mom or dad there is scary. And you can have those conversations, and they're incredibly powerful and healing. So I'm going to also write up a little thing about that. And then the final question that I got is about marriages where there's no sex. And I love this question because nobody ever talks about this. And so the question is kind of like, how do we define marriage, and how do we define sex, and how are we with what's happening, right? So when I got engaged, my aunt said to me, are you going to have kids? And I was like, I was so protective of my privacy back then. I was totally evasive. And even though I was planning to have kids, I was like, well, I don't know what. And I was, 30, so I didn't even know if I could get, I was old. I didn't even know if I could get pregnant. So I didn't want to have like everybody waiting for me to get pregnant. And then it turned out I couldn't get pregnant. And then there's all that pressure. So I said, I don't know. And she's like, well, that's the only reason to get married. I was like, really? Because I can think of a lot of reasons to get married, and not all of them are about having children. So my kind of blanket statement to this, and the question is that situation, does that situation happen because there's a block? And the answer is maybe. And the process is the same as any process in this. Is there upset inside of you? And in this kind of situation, the upset is going to probably be a little bit harder to recognize, because we have so much societal pressure about who we are and what's okay and what's not okay in relationships. So the answer is no, it's not necessarily a block or a problem in chakra 2 unless it bothers you. And if it bothers you, then you treat it like any other upset. You look at the feelings, you look at the beliefs, you do self-forgiveness, and then if there's something to be said inside of your relationship, then you say it. But always do the healing on yourself first. And if you are judging your situation based on societal norms or belief systems from other institutions or shoulds, then it's a great opportunity to open that up, to look at it. remember, the key to heaven is being in acceptance of what is now, what is truth. So living in that place of truth of what is and what's so for you is where our happiness lies. That's the bliss that we get to have on this planet. So whatever the situation is and this goes for all of the relationships, right? Because chakra 2 is about all of our relationships. If there's upset, then there's healing to be done. If there's not upset, then there's nothing wrong. There are, a million ways to be in relationship. And there's a million reasons to be married. And there's a million reasons that don't involve sex to be married. So, I want to make sure that anything that comes up, if you have judgments about yourself, that you recognize that. Remember, how you are with yourself as you go through the issue is the issue. It's not about whether you're having sex with your spouse. It's not about whether you're in relationship with your sibling or not. It's about how you're being with yourself in that situation. And again, our primary relationships can be the greatest mirrors and teachers for us about all of our relationships. So is there a way to use this relationship to go, wait, what's my relationship with myself? And we'll talk about this in chakra 3. Spoiler alert, chakra 3 animal is the coyote, and because chakra 3 is all about our relationship with ourselves. And this is too. So as we're healing our relationships with others, we're doing it before we really talk about our relationship with ourselves, which is chakra 3. Because in our development, we go from our family that we're born into to the community where we now have relationships that are outside the community to going out into the world as an individual. And we go through the family and the community before we get to ourselves. So there's some things that are a little bit backwards. And when I set up this class, I really thought about starting with chakra 3 because our relationship with ourselves is so foundational for everything. And it just didn't make sense to go 3, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like, they're going to think I'm nuts. So that's kind of my final word because I'm supposed to pick up Zane in 6 minutes. And my intention was to be complete at 3:30 and I'm already 9 minutes past, but we knew I was going to go over, right? We know me, right? This is how I do it. So that's kind of my final thing. I think I got through all of the questions. If I didn't get to your question somehow, email me, but I think we've contained every kind of relationship that we can have associated with chakra 2. And the steps to healing them are the same, no matter what relationship is. If it's with your kid or your spouse or your pet or your boss or your employee or your milkman. That's a fun old-fashioned reference. But it's new again. They're doing that again. It's all inside of you, and anything inside of you is yours, and you can heal it. No matter what is going on in that relationship, no matter if that's a relationship where you're never going to talk to that person again in life, even though they're alive, you can still heal that relationship inside yourself. And I want that to be the good news of chakra 2, because chakra 2 has so much greatness to it, so much interaction and connection and belonging and creativity and joy and all of these beautiful, beautiful things. And the more we can heal ourselves using our relationships as a tool to heal ourselves, the more we get that really amazing, solid foundation of feeling connected to the planet like we belong, because so many of us have felt like we don't belong here, right? And that energy then supports us for all of the other chakras as well. So we get to integrate and be ourselves in our livelihood, our chakra 1. We get to integrate and be ourselves and self-expressed in our relationships, in our creativity. We get to do that in each of these chakras. The more we heal each of the issues from each of these chakras, the more balanced and fluid and open that chakra is, and the more we get the most harmonious expression and the most balanced and the most empowered aspect of that chakra. And we get the physical health that goes with it. So doing the emotional work and healing our relationship issues is also going to heal everything associated with that chakra. So now, we're doing our relationships and we're healing our uterus, we're healing our fallopian tubes, we're healing our ovaries and our bladders, right? So we can have good physical health. We're healing our flexibility in our lower back. All of that stuff all comes in chakra 2, our hips, our ability to move forward in the world. That's part of chakra 2 as well. Obviously, I could just talk and talk and talk and talk. And since nobody's interrupting me, I just keep going. But I got a kid waiting for me and I have to go take a video. Louisa, you were late, but my son is shaving his head today.
No, for Halloween?
Yeah, he's going to be Shrek for Halloween, and he's going 100%. So I have to go pick him up and get him to the hair cutter place.
Awesome.
And make sure that my phone is charged so I can videotape the whole thing. But if you watch the replay, I showed pictures of him and my daughter earlier, and I will have, that's the before, and I'll have an after for you guys. Maybe I'll post it in Facebook tomorrow for Halloween. So
great.
Anything you guys need to say or share in order to feel complete for today with chakra 2?
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. I think next time we're going to do it in a month instead of a week, because there's so much in each chakra.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, we're doing it now. So it's awesome. You guys are doing great. Hang in there. Tomorrow is chakra 3. You get the coyote with you. That's going to be super fun. Coyote is super awesome. And I love chakra 3. It's where kids learn how to say no. Yay, the terrible twos, the terrific twos. We get to relive them. All right, so have a great week. You know where to find me. Everybody seems to be in the Facebook group. I'll give you another day. I'll give you till Friday, and then I'm going to change it back to private because I want you guys to feel safe that you can share in there without it being broadcast all over Facebook. And I think that's it for now. I think otherwise we're good. We good? All right.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Thanks, you guys. Keep it up. You're awesome. I love seeing you. I can't wait to see you next week. Chakra 3. Woohoo. Good job on chakra 2. Bye, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.